Well, thank you, Mark. Hey, it's so good to be with you this morning. I want to ask you a question, and it's this. Have you ever felt like there are parts of your life that you can't share with anyone? I mean, it could be like a secret, maybe something you've done, something that was done to you, or, some interest or hobby, or just a way that you think about the world, something that you can't share with other people. It feels like it's for you alone. I know I felt that way before, and I kind of feel sometimes like I live my life like it's social media, where I can share the good parts easily and with whoever I want, but the bad parts, the struggles, I kind of want to keep to myself. It's like I want to live my life like a highlight reel, saying, here's the best parts. Maybe you felt that way before as well, because here's the thing, is that sometimes people suck, don't they? Sometimes we can share something with someone, we can be open with someone, and then we realize they're a bad listener. We might even get hurt by sharing. And so we shut down, right? We don't want to share. Maybe you've asked someone for input in a part of your life and you realize they have terrible advice. And so now you've decided, I'm going to do these things on my own. And maybe you believe the relationships are hard. They are. Relationships are difficult. Every type of relationship. Oh, and by the way, happy Valentine's Day. If you're having a hard relationship, just keep going. Celebrate a little today, though. But relationships are hard. And what I want to do today as we end this series we've been in called Open, where we've been talking about community, is just challenge this thought, because maybe if you're like me, you don't feel open at times. And maybe you don't feel open right now. Maybe you're thinking, I'm good, I'm all right, the way things are working out, they're fine. I don't need to be more open. Or maybe you crave being more open. Maybe you're just hungry for opportunities to share and be vulnerable and find the right people and open yourselves to them in your life. Well, either way, I want to stick with this summary statement that we've had for the past few weeks, and it's this. You don't find community, you open yourself up to it. You don't just go out and find a community, but rather you need to open yourself up to it. And the crazy thing is that we actually believe this is possible. And we actually believe this is possible, especially with God, and that He can do this in our lives in incredible ways. We believe this because Jesus relentlessly pursued us. He chased us down in a loving way, and He restored the broken relationship we had with Him. And He made it right. And we believe that we actually get to pursue others the way Jesus pursues us. And maybe you're wondering how, and that's what we're going to wrestle through today, but I believe that is what true living looks like. That's what purpose looks like. And so as we go through this journey, I want to just tackle one more thing before we end off this open series. And then we're going to spend some time seeking God and His Spirit. Does that sound good? Well, I guess you can't respond, so it has to sound good. All right. Well, last week, Mark gave us 3 key clues to listening well. And he said that I'd be talking about one more thing. And that's what I'm going to do today. One more thing that is essential to real, authentic relationships and community. And what I want to do for that is I want to open up a piece of ancient wisdom written thousands of years ago, and just take one verse from the book of Proverbs and just pour over it today, wrestle through it, and see what it means for our lives. And so if you have a Bible, it's Proverbs 27, verse 17. Otherwise, it'll be on the screen right here as well. And it says these words, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And throughout my life, every time I've heard or seen or read this verse, it reminds me of a story. Now, if you were like me when you were young, and maybe even now, and still now, because I did this last summer, you love chasing down an ice cream truck. When you hear that music playing, that just no matter how annoying it is, it's glorious. You hear it coming around the corner, you run inside, you grab your change, you run out the door, which I guess they take tap now, which is awesome, but they didn't have that when I was a kid. And so you run out the door and you go and you get ready to buy that ice cream. Even if it's bad, it's just exciting. And I remember one time when I was a kid, I heard this kind of music and this sound of a bell ringing. And I thought to myself, the ice cream truck is coming. So I ran inside and grabbed my change. I ran outside and there was this weird green truck pulling into the court that I lived in. And I looked over at my dad and I said, Dad, why did the ice cream truck have a makeover? Like, what's with the ice cream truck? And my dad said to me, he said, oh, that's not the ice cream truck. That's the knife sharpening truck. And I remember looking like, that's the creepiest thing ever. You mean there's a guy who drives around tricking kids into thinking they're getting ice cream but sharpens knives? I'm like, that's terrifying. And I remember just thinking like, what a weird thing. But my dad looked at it and said, that's awesome. We need to get our mower blades sharpened. And I was like, what? Who are you? But you know how dads are with their lawns. Like, I have one now, it's mostly just dirt. But anyways, he was excited because the guy came around and he was able to sharpen his mower blades. And the thing is that these knife sharpening trucks, I don't think they have them anymore because I haven't seen them anymore, but what they do is they ring a bell and they let you know that they have what you need. And so you need to bring out your dull tools in order for them to be sharpened. In order for them to be sharpened. And I think the same is true for us. The same is true for us. In order for us to be sharp, we need to bring out the dull tools. We need to bring out the dull parts and allow them to be sharpened. And so what do I mean when I say sharpening or sharpened? What is sharpening? Well, there's a lot of different perspectives on this passage. Some people say it's about sharpening your mind, and I think that's beautiful, that we sharpen our minds, about gaining wisdom in decision-making, that we come to decisions with more thoughtfulness, that we are, in a sense, allowing another perspective to speak into our lives, to correct our wrong thinking. Or it can mean interacting with good, helpful, positive people that can help hone our skills as we face challenges. You think about that, an axe cuts through difficult and hard to break things, and that's the same kind of way. But this week I was also I got to amaze my kids. It's always wonderful when as a parent, when your kids look at you like, you're amazing. And so I had a little axe in my basement, and I said, do you guys want to see how axes chop wood? And I showed them, and I hit the wood very softly, and it split right in half, and they just looked at me like, are you a superhero? And I was like, oh, absolutely. And then I tried to show them on a harder piece of wood, and it was a little difficult, but we'll leave that part aside. But they were amazed at the effortlessness that it took the blade to cut through the wood. And a sharp blade can radically change the use and function and look of wood. And I believe that when we are sharp, we are able to change the world. In fact, that's one of our core values here at Lakeside, that you, me, all of us have the potential to change the world. But we need to be sharp. In fact, the key motivator and definition in being sharp, I'm going to argue, is that we are able to change the world, to be like Jesus, to leave things different than we find them. And so being sharp equals changing the world. It's a summary statement of this. Being sharp equals changing the world. And in order to do so, we need community. And you know this. You know this. Perhaps you've sat under the guidance and wisdom of someone else in your life. Maybe over COVID, which many of us have had the opportunity, you've taken a sort of master class, or you've been to an online seminar, or you've watched something in your field of work or in some sort of area of your life where there's a professional in that area, and they speak wisdom and truth about that way of working or living, and you leave it thinking, wow, I feel so much better. I feel stronger. I feel smarter. It's like a TED Talk, but for your life, those happen. And I think the same thing is essential for our faith. I actually believe that we need to find those who we can sit under to teach the master classes of following Jesus to us. That we need to listen to other voices. But I've noticed this, and maybe you've noticed this too, is that people, and I would argue especially Christians, are very easily see the dullness in others, see the things that need to change in others, and not in ourselves. We often see the flaws of people around us, like, oh, they need to change this and that, and well, how could they do that? What's wrong with them? Why are they thinking that way? Why would they do that? But then we make excuses for ourselves. And I'm not talking about how we need to be self-critical and shaming, and we'll come to that a bit later, but I'm talking about acknowledging and removing denial in our life and seeing shortcomings. And I think one of the reasons we have a problem with this is because becoming dull is a slow process. Becoming dull is a slow process. You know, if you're using a tool or anything that has a blade on it, it doesn't, after one strike, become completely dull. But over time, every single strike, it becomes more and more dull. And you don't realize how it originally was until you sharpen it. And I think the same is true for us. We can become behind and lacking and struggling and weak in certain areas of our lives. But we don't realize that because compared to yesterday, we're not really any different. And I also think that we don't always want to become sharper. We don't always want to become sharper. We don't really like it, right? Because it hurts. I mean, if you think about sharpening something, sparks are flying around, chunks are being removed, the bumps are being smoothed out. And if I think about that metaphor applying to my life, that's painful. I don't want to have pieces of my life picked apart by someone, being told what's wrong with me and what needs to change. And I don't want to, realize, I'm doing things wrong and they need to be different. It's hard. It hurts. It can be offensive. And maybe you've experienced that before. Maybe someone has tried to correct something in your life and they've just spoken painful words towards you and it hurts. And you're like, I don't want to do that again. I'm not listening to the voices of others because last time I did, it hurt. Or maybe you just don't notice anything wrong. I'm able to get things done. Sure, I'm not as sharp as I once was or as fast as I once was. Sure, I'm not, I once had these big dreams of changing the world, but now I've seen a bit of the reality and how the world works. And there's too many reasons why I can't actually. And so maybe you don't notice things are going wrong or the flaws, the bumps, the shortcomings. Or maybe you actually like them. I think about, in my office downtown, I have this beautiful old planer my wife got for me, a tool, and I think I have it there just because it looks awesome. It has great character. I don't have a brand new tool there because that would just look weird. And sometimes we look at parts of our lives and we say, this is just who I am. It's a bit of my personality. Add some character to who I am. Yeah, sure, you might see it as a flaw, but deal with it because that's who I am. And I also believe we don't like to admit that we're dull. We don't like to admit we need the voices of others in our lives. Why? Because it makes us look weak. It makes us look like we can't handle things. And I used to think this was just a problem with men, but I've seen it in men and women. Everywhere. You see online, the way we post online, we talk about how we've got everything together. Or the way we speak about other people and how we brag about our accomplishments. We don't like to admit when we don't have it all together, when we're dull, but I believe we also crave it. We also crave it. I think actually part of the way we were created and part of the way you feel and I feel is that we long to feel vulnerable and unashamed. In fact, Mark's referred back to the creation story a couple times in this series, and I want to just remind you if you've read it or just let you know if you haven't about one part. And it's this: when Adam and Eve were created, it said that they were naked and unashamed. Naked and unashamed. I'm not advocating that we need to come to church naked. Please do not come to church naked. But they were unashamed. What it means is that they were able to completely bear themselves before each other. They could feel completely open to each other. And I think we all crave relationships like that, where we don't have to hide any part of it with a mask or sort of spiritual or metaphorical clothing, but that we can just be ourselves before others. But I want to give you this little rhyme for you today. It says, when shame came, they pointed blame. When shame came, they pointed blame. God came to Adam and Eve in the garden. And he said, what happened? What happened? And Adam said, it was her, that woman you gave me. And the woman goes, no, it was that snake you put in here. Instead of acknowledging their shortcomings and their flaws, they pointed somewhere else. And boy, do we ever do that. Well, if my spouse, if they were different, if they treated me better, then I wouldn't have done that. Or if my kids, if they didn't act out and be crazy, then, I wouldn't have this problem. Or if my neighbor was just a little bit nicer, maybe I wouldn't have cussed at them yesterday. Or, it's COVID. The world is such a mess. Of course I'm going to do these things. There's so many excuses that we make. And yes, absolutely, things are hard. I'm not belittling that. Things are difficult. And that's okay. It's okay. But we cannot let shame and the fear that it brings rule the day. Shame traps us. Fear traps us. We think if I open up, then they'll find out. If I share this with someone, then they'll know this. I won't look good anymore. I mean, they might judge me, ridicule me. It might ruin our relationship, our friendship, our marriage, our my job. I can't open up. I can't. One piece of wisdom I heard years ago is awesome. It's this. It's called play the tape forward. Play the tape forward. I want you to imagine if you told that thing you haven't told anyone to someone, what actually would happen? You might think the world will fall apart. But play it forward. Play out all the scenarios. Perhaps it's going to end much better than you're anticipating. Perhaps you're letting shame and fear run the narrative instead of God and his grace and love. Play the tape forward. And I know we all long to feel freedom from that shame and that fear of opening up. Feel that we can truly be open. And discovering real community means being open to being sharpened. Or put another way, real community means being open to the wise voices of others. Real community means being open to the wise voices of others. So I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. Am I open to being sharpened? Are you open? Are you open to being sharpened? Am I open to having others speak freely into all areas of my life? That's hard. Vulnerability is hard because we've been conditioned to be strong, to move forwards, to be perfect. And the problem, as Mark alluded to, and as we've seen this week, is that seemingly great leaders fall into absolute destruction because they fail to allow others to be a part of their life. They fail to let others speak into their lives. They work so hard to build a platform that no one can touch. And they say, look at what I've done. And they fall because they're unwilling to be open. Build an empire of protection and performance and platform, but at what cost? And we're all capable of that. We are all capable of being so close to others that it causes our destruction. But true leadership involves countless time spent under the sharpener. True leadership isn't about being ahead and above everyone, but rather submitting and resting and listening to the wise counsel of others. And as Mark mentioned last week, being sharpened and finding true freedom and transformation and living how we were created to live involves listening. Listening. We need to be willing to listen. Are you willing to listen to the wise voices of those around you? I remember when I was in my late teens and young adult years, I wanted to make some key changes in my life, but I was unwilling to be open. I tried these things alone. Actually, I was an elite gymnast growing up, competed regularly, and I felt that I was strong. I did this individual sport on my own, and I don't need others. But boy, did I ever need others. I want you to imagine for a second if that sharpening truck I mentioned earlier came down my street. And my dad looked at it and he heard the bell ring and he said, oh, man, if only that guy would get out of his truck, come knock on my door and say, hi, I'm just going into your garage, take the lawnmower, flip it over, take the blades off, sharpen them and put them back. It's like, that'd be ridiculous. My dad needed to take the blades out to him and say, they need to be sharpened. Can you help me? And the same is true in our lives. Actually, we need to be willing to go out and reach out to others, not waiting for them to come and correct us, but we need to actually be open, hoping that they will listen. But maybe, like you, I know I experienced this, is that I reached out to people and it didn't help. It didn't help. I reached out to so many people and I found there's just a problem. I created groups of people to come around and that hopefully they would ask me the right questions and all these sort of things. And I finally found this one guy, though. It was amazing. I remember this leader I had in my life, I asked him if we could grab a coffee and chat. And it's funny, actually, so I asked him if we could hang out. He suggested the coffee. So I showed up. I didn't drink coffee then, so I ordered a cream of broccoli soup. And we're sitting there, and he's drinking his coffee, and I'm eating my soup and just, being a mess. And I realized this is someone I can be safe with. And so I shared some things with this person, and it was amazing to be able to feel open and transparent with them. And I actually, I moved and I didn't see them for a while, but I bumped into them 10 years later. And we were actually able to pour out truth into each other's lives. And I was able to share things, and they asked me hard questions, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. But then I had another friend who spoke this amazing, profound truth in my life. I asked them, if I'd be able to be open to them, and if we could develop this relationship where we could share things and that sort of thing. And I remember they said this phrase to me, and it was so good. They said that if I actually wanted to pursue a vulnerable relationship with them, I needed to come to them and be open. I shouldn't be sitting waiting for them to ask me tough questions, but I needed to come to them and be open. Because so many of us are looking for a friend or a spouse or a child or a parent or a neighbor or a coworker or a leader to be our Savior. But Jesus is our Savior. And that's what this person spoke into my life. He said, I'm not your Savior. I'm just a friend along for the journey. You see, Jesus saves us. Others don't. But we truly believe that being open to community makes the journey far greater. I was going to give a list of ways to be a good sharpener, or to find a good sharpener. You need to find a person like this and find someone like that. But then I was reminded of our whole mantra of this series is that we don't find community, we open ourselves up to it. And chances are, if you think about it, if you pause and reflect, you know someone who could be that wise voice in your life. You might know multiple someones. Think about that for a second. Who can be this person in your life? And we'll reflect on that in a bit. But Jesus saves us. Jesus saves us. Others help us on the journey. And if we want to live the life we are created to live, a life ready to change the world, then we should. We need to be open to other voices speaking in our lives. And so what would it look like for you to cultivate that in your relationships that you have now? Who can you be open to? Who can you ask to ask you the tough questions? Or who can you share the hard things, the things you've never shared with? I bet you know someone. I bet you have someone in your life you could do that with. And if you truly do not, please reach out to us. Just visit our website and connect with us in any way possible. We would love to help you on that journey also. But I bet you have someone if you think. Now, what about the other side, right? I talked all about us being sharpened, but do we get to sharpen others too? And the answer is yes, we do. In fact, we're called to do that. It's actually part of what it means to follow Jesus in a community. But we do that with truth and grace. I mean, Jesus did this so much. If you just think of the story, if you've been through the Gospels, if you haven't, I would encourage you to read them. But if you have, you may have encountered this story where Jesus goes into the Garden of Gethsemane and he goes to pray, and he tells his disciples to watch and pray, and he comes back to them and they're asleep. He's like, how could you not stay awake? How could you fall asleep in this time? And he calls them out on their garbage. And he's like, why are you guys sleeping? And it happens again, and so on. And so Jesus practiced this habit of calling out those close to him on the stuff that they are struggling with, their shortcomings. But he reminds us to do so in truth, but in love, to speak the truth in love. The motivation is love. Yes, we're speaking truth, but the motivation is love. So don't mask judgment and condemnation with truth telling. You say, well, I got to tell them the truth. And so we speak a harsh word into people's lives. Rather, tell them the truth because you love them, and sit with them, wrestle with them, listen with them, ask them if you can speak into their lives. We aren't called to condemn other people, but rather correct them, help them along the way. We don't look at the dullness in their life and say, you're useless, and throw them away, but rather we seek to help them become sharp so that they too can be partakers in God's mission of changing the world. And if you're sharp, if you're regularly being sharpened, you'll much easier cut to the heart. and help them find transformation instead of hurt. And so now as we're finishing up this series called Open, I want to ask you this question. Am I willing to be open? Are you willing to be open? We've spent 6 weeks or so wrestling with this question. So are you willing to be open? Are you willing to allow others into your life? Because life is so much better when you do. And I want to remind you that you were created by God, that he designed you, that he made you, and that he loves you dearly, and he made you in his image. You are actually made in the image of God. But perhaps you felt that separation. You felt a distance between you and God. Have you felt that before? But the beautiful thing about our God is that he runs that distance and he knocks at the door and he says, I'm here. Let me in. He makes the difference. See, Jesus offers life. He offers life. He knows everything you're afraid to open up about to others. He knows all of it, every detail of it. And yet he loves you immensely and unconditionally. He actually defeated death for you, for me, for all of us. And in John, the book of John, chapter 3, we read words that says that whoever believes in him shall receive life, eternal life, life with God in his presence. Do you long to truly live? Because he longs to be with you. Through the cross and resurrection, he has made it possible for you to be with him forever. So he's knocking at the door. Will you open it and let him in? Do you need a fresh start? Let him in. Is it time for you to be open? Let him in. Just say, Jesus, I believe. I believe right now, wherever you find yourself. Jesus, I believe. Do you believe that he loves you? That he's pursuing you, that he longs to be in a relationship with you? Jesus, I believe. And if you believe that, I want you to imagine with me what your relationships could be like if you pursued them like Jesus pursues you. That he was willing to give it all because of his love for you. As we wrap up this series, I just think that that's such a beautiful truth to ponder and challenge. If we pursued others like Jesus pursued us. And so again, I ask you, are you willing to be open to community? We'd love to be part of that journey with you. So just reflect on that question for a second. Am I willing to be open? If you've been with us through the past few weeks, think of what area in your life is keeping you from being more open. Ask God to speak to you in that. And as you head out today, I want to leave you with these words, the words of Paul in Romans chapter 1. He's writing to the Roman people, and he's talking all about their great faith and how he's excited to see them. And he says these words, he says, I long to be with you so we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. And as we head into the coming weeks of reopening and the world is beginning to shift in different ways again for us, I want to encourage you I remind you that you are welcome to join us here at Lakeside North or downtown or online, or, there's a multitude of ways that you can connect with people. But we cannot wait to be with you in whatever platform or format that looks like, so that we can encourage you and that you can encourage us, and you can do that with many other people. And so as you leave this week, I want to remind you that we don't find community, we open ourselves up to it. And so go this week and be open to God working in your life and through your life with others. Be blessed.